Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the World Improv Network's Heroes of Improv. If you love these heroes, please subscribe to the World Improv Network's YouTube channel because it's just the nice thing to do. Come on. Um, but we're really excited today because we have Scotty Watson here to fill us in on the colorful history of improv. Scotty, welcome.
Hey, nice to be here. Of course,
Thank you.
I'm in my own home, so it's nice to be here.
And I would really appreciate, could you give everybody a bit of a background on how improv and your world has come together?
I started. I walked into the front doors at the Second City Toronto when I was 16.
Mm.
I am what? I'm 26 now. No, I am 56. So that was 40 years ago this year. I've been doing this for 40 years. So I did the Second City Toronto and theater sports, which was also, Toronto was a cool little burg for improv at the time. As a matter of fact, at the time, Toronto Second City was the head office because Andrew Alexander had just bought the whole shebang. So it was an exciting time. It was also fun to be part of multiple different improv traditions. Well, I shouldn't even say improv because theater sports, that kind of comedic improv, you use the short word improv.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you start talking about improvisational theater, like the Second City was at that time, then we actually used the full word improvisation. And that was kind of the defining line with that.
That is really interesting because one of the most one thing that's jumped out the most to us doing these interviews is the vocabulary. Pro improv. We have been talking about dramatic improv, and people are reacting violently, like, "Ah!" and yeah, I know, and it's been really interesting. So when it's interesting to me that improvisation. Why hasn't that stuck on more? Or why do we get all into the short form, long form? You know,
I'll tell you what. Okay, I'm going to take you back to the 80s and 90s. And there were all these really cool entertainment magazines. In Toronto, it was Now magazine, but they've been these magazines forever.
Mhm.
And what they sold was a business card size ad, nice blank business card size ad. And that's advertising of the business card. This is a standard size of an ad. So we originally were in the theater section, and the theater section sold its ads in horizontal format, landscape.
Mm.
And so what we were selling was improvisational theater, and that was pretty good. But those newspapers, everybody, the first thing they turned to was Ernie Pook's Comique and Life in Hell,
Oh yeah.
Browning's thing. And then they'd immediately go to the nightclub section because everything was about nightclubs back then. So a lot more people read the nightclub section. The nightclub section of those newspapers sold their ads, same size, but in portrait. And so as soon as our ads got flipped, we went, let's move it to the nightclub section because more people go there. Mm-hmm. Same price for the ad, but all of a sudden the word improvisation is illegible on this ad. Mm-hmm. So we shortened it to improv. And when it got shortened from improvisational theater, it got shortened to improv comedy because everybody else in that night, the stand-up clubs were all there. So we became improv comedy. Mm-hmm. And what you name something affects it. So I myself noticed the Second City going from improvisational theater to improv comedy in my time there. Mm. Improvisational theater, the symbol of theater is a comedy and a tragedy mask. There's two masks. There's two sides to it. And so what we always did at the Second City when I first went there was, this is theater. We're using it as a developmental tool to create those sketches, and then hopefully those sketches are gonna twist themselves into something longer, like a play or a movie. They started becoming movies. It was all big developmental tool for a larger thing. But we wouldn't call the improv set over until you had a serious scene, until you had what we called a tearjerker. So I find it interesting how an art form, and Michael Gelman and I, there's a discussion over whether it's an art form or whether it's a trade or a skill. What do you call it? And that's not a trade, skill, trade, I guess. There's been some discussion even over that, but watching it separate itself, where in fact improvisation or improv, whatever you call it, is both of those things.
That's one of the questions I've had lingering for me. Is I recently got involved in improv, and through a class, that first wondrous class where you're just trying to keep your head above water, and then like halfway, after about the fourth session, you go, oh, if I just shut up and keep my mouth shut, I can do this. And then it gets easier from there. I just was like going, hey, I want to do like what you described. I want to do some of the stuff where it's like a tearjerker. And so I started looking for the crying, and I couldn't find it. And I thought maybe it's just that in Minneapolis, St. Paul, there's that's not the deal. Maybe it's more the sports, more the short form. But then all of a sudden I noticed it was sort of like the Herald. Oh, the Herald. And then I was, so I started reading up about that and saw like the UCB and all of the, elaborate framework that was building up around the Herald. And I was going, isn't there more? Because it seems like it's been 20 plus years of, and I'm not trying to, trash the Herald, but
no, not at all. Well, it's been a heck of a lot more than 20 years. I mean, the tradition, the Second City style tradition, has been around since the 50s. But I mean, improvisation is as old as, Commedia dell'arte was a form of improvisation. Also just so Herald is a pretty deeply misunderstood monster. Having, I was a very, very young man when Herald first started coming around. First thing you'll notice, I don't put an article in front of Herald. There is no a Herald. There is no the Herald. We are going to Herald. I went and saw Herald. They heralded because it's nothing and it's everything. We're in one now. So what people often refer to when they refer to Herald is the format that's in Truth and Comedy by Del Close and Charna Halpern, mostly Charna, and oh, for God's sake, there's a third person, and I'll probably get shit for it. I'm blanking. It's like when you can't remember your middle name. Anyway, there's a form in there that IO put together, and that's a format of Herald, one of many, many, many. Herald is this weird, loose, wonderful thing where you fall into scenes, you fall into games, taking it and codifying and putting it into a form. And every time you say the word form, you're talking about format. Or formula of it. That as soon as you do that, A1, B1, C1, A1, A2, A3, all the way down with palate cleansers in between, then you're doing one kind of Herald thing. The other Herald thing that you can do is just find yourself falling into these games and scenes, but that takes decades of work and practice with a troupe to be able to improvise that way. So for a place that mostly was doing classes, then you want to make sure that you're your workshop of 6 to 8 people. Everybody gets an even amount of time, so you create a format. So
Right.
just, that's my moment about Herald, is to go, it's not every Herald, that's just one Herald.
I love the word formula. Uh,
Mhm.
and um, I can see some people balking at structure, especially with improvisation, but having the formula there to use actually, for me, has always been this like freeing thing of something to grab onto when I need to,
Right.
or something to call back to. Um, and and when I discuss, or bring up well, in the decades since um, I was searching for more formulas. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
there must be more formulas, and especially one thing that I was wondering is with the more dramatic side of the map. I could see all the outlets for the comedic approach,
Mhm.
and so what have you seen for more narrative or dramatic approaches?
Well, let me challenge you first, on that, because when you are seeking out either a comedic or a dramatic, that in itself is a form of pre-planning,
Hmm.
right? So you get, and there are plenty of people, Michael Gelman included, that do workshops on pre-planning and knowing what's coming out. Commedia had a list of what needed to be done in each scene, but a lot of us do improvisation uh, in a far more discovery format. I one of my mentors was, Gary Austin, the crazy old dude that started the Groundlings out in L.A. And he would be shouting at this point, of course. Uh, but I think that he would say, when you seek out to be dramatic, then you are trying to pre-plan. You are writing the scene before you do it, as
Hmm.
opposed to, let's go out and do theater, knowing it theater is both a comedy and a tragedy mask, and whatever happens happens. Does that make sense? I feel a little bit, and the reason I'm pushing back on you a little bit is that by saying I want to do this,
Right.
well then you're starting to put yourself in handcuffs, as opposed to, I'm going to improvise and I'm open to this or that.
Yeah, you're making a big choice. It's like it and um and I would come back with that. I think part of that is in reaction to just that it seems like the pendulum historically has been
Mhm.
comedic.
Because we've made as bad that's because people have made as bad a choice. I'm going to go out and get laughs. Oh my god, you're not going to get laughs if that's the, do you know the old, there's an old adage, supposedly it's Gil Good, but he was in a play, and it was a comedy, and he always got a big laugh on this line, may I have a cup of tea, please? Because with this cacophony going on, he stops getting a laugh. And he started saying, I don't understand why I'm not getting a laugh anymore. And then one of the actors that he was working with, I wish I knew the names, said, that's because you've stopped asking for a cup of tea and you've started asking for a laugh.
Ah.
And there's truly nothing worse. Have you seen the person that's improvising, trying to get funny? Isn't it funny? Force the funny. Let it be what it is, man.
That was recently. I since what I've been playing with recently has been the not chasing the laugh stuff.
Right.
So I ended up in a class that everybody was in the comedic. They were
Right.
making comedic choices, and I was struggling. I was like, trying to adjust back to it, and then I finally said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to do my straight dramatic and not chase the laugh.
Mhm.
So I was just coming in, just like, can I have a cup of tea? And I got one of the biggest. This is I'm relating to what you said. People, and it's because it stood out.
Right.
But that was the thing to me is I started saying, I wonder how long I can pull this off, and no one will say, wait a minute, you're not. doing it right, so that's interesting. I think what you're getting at is that don't eliminate the side of the pendulum where there could be legitimate laughter, but it's the not chasing. It's the you're asking for the cup of tea, not the.
Chase nothing. Go out and make discoveries. That was something Gary screamed at me one day. He didn't scream. He was a lovely man. I miss Gary a lot. But I said, I have an idea. He goes, nobody wants to hear your stupid ass idea. He says, all people want to see you do is go on out there, tell the truth and make discoveries. That's it. And I went, wow. So there is a certain amount of, if you go out there chasing one or the other, you're demanding too much. Whereas if you go out and you go, okay, I'm open to anything. Whatever this story that already exists that's going to tell itself through me. Now I'm sounding really granola. But whatever the story that is going to be told through me, that's the story. It's interesting. You got a big laugh because there's nothing funnier in this world than telling the truth, being honest, tears. Oh my God, in a scene when somebody starts crying, really in the scene, in the moment, and they're improvising. If people are in a club to see improv comedy, they're going to laugh. If they're in a theater to see an improvised play, it could go either way. Mm-hmm. It's oh, by the way, Kim Johnson, that's the third writer on.
You did it.
Well, I didn't do it. I looked it up. My brain is not working, and so I think
you were able to multitask. That is pretty cool. Yeah. It's I think that is really incredible advice. We ask everybody for advice. Hey, we're doing this improvised soap. What advice would you give? But I think one of the things that I've noticed is there's this fun thrill of, hey, I've got a character, and this character is going to be in this environment in Duluth, and you can start doing all this world building. But there's something to be said for just sit back and discover and let whatever comes your way. Like I've noticed, just look at your partner, even though it's through Zoom, and if they raise an eyebrow or if they have a smirk, that's enough to start discovering. And then don't pile on, oh, and the will is in the vault, and people.
Here's some sadness.
Yeah. Can I get a cup of sadness? So
and you know what, your first offer is walking out on stage. I remember I was working with this great improviser in Toronto named David Healy. And the man just has 360-degree awareness. Just, he's terrifying. And at the time I had hair, and I came out and I did something with my hair, like I brushed it out of my eyes, if you can, that's how many years ago it was. And David just took that as my first offer and responded, I know. And I'm a young improviser going, I'm in a scene. This scene is happening. And I had to go back and go, oh, it's this. Because I'm like that. And he goes, I know. It was a touching, lovely, fun scene. And I just remember that electric feeling of, oh, the scene has started. Okay. Just a gesture.
Well, this has been really, really cool. If you had some extra super duper non-pie related advice for the cast of Duluth, what tips would you give us?
I'm going to go with the words of Gary Austin. Go out there, tell the truth, and make discoveries. And be open to anything. Chase nothing. If a moment is legitimately funny, it's legitimately funny. If it's legitimately sad, it's legitimately sad. Let it talk through you. Don't be you talk through it.
Okay, now for the big one. What about the pie?
Oh, yes. The bigger the chunk of fruit, the better. Also, a very good friend of mine, Kim McCallum, runs a company called Lot 8 out of Toronto, does a lot of very rustic things like that. We were making a pie together, and I was making it really nice and pretty. And she goes, "Don't make it too pretty. People will think it comes from a store."
Ah, that's good for improv too.
Right? Don't make it too pretty.
Yeah.
They'll think you bought it at a store.
So thank you so much. Where can people find out more about Scotty Watson, about your book, about the
Uh,
items that you involved with?
So ScottyWatsonImprov.com. That's pretty easy. ScottyWatsonImprov.com. I do have a book that's mostly sayings by other people. I found myself saying the same things over and over again, and they ended up morphing into a book. I did no work on this thing, by the way. It was my assistant at the time, Stephen Thornton, who's another good person that you want to chat with. He's in Lisboa, Portugal. Stephen Thornton was my assistant, teaching assistant at the time. Not my assistant, my teaching assistant. He taught. We taught simultaneously, and he wrote all those things down and said, "You say these things all the time." And then that turned into a book.
Cool. Well, we'll put those links in the comments. Thanks again. This is wonderful.
This was lovely. Thank you. It was nice chatting.